if you're listening to this, you likely want to or are part of a career in which that tends to be very lucrative, but focus on advanced technologies and advanced science. So it might be in PhD careers that are more in the technology side, like biotechnology, for example, genomics. Or you might be interested in artificial intelligence and machine learning and these kind of areas. Or, if you're broadly interested in, it might be fintech, for example, finance technology. And there's all these areas of advanced technologies, and yet it's very difficult to actually enter these careers for most people. They hear about them and they say, well, these are wonderful careers to get into. Right? This is like back in the day when computer science was a really big thing in my area. Um, and lots of people were interested in that in terms of going and you don't even know, right? Like that's the interesting thing is many times you don't even know about these kind of careers. And that's where I want to start with is, how do you actually enter them? And, what actually is it about? I think the vast majority of what you'll listen to on this channel is these careers where there's lots of research is very R&D heavy, research and development heavy. They may have a lot of PhDs that talk about that a lot. They may have interesting dynamics such as the trade-off between short-term and long-term that is very different than most careers. People don't understand that. It might be in like pharmaceuticals, for example, where you have to think about, okay, I'm going to develop this thing right now and it's not valuable. How do I make sure that I survive for 10 years and by the time it actually gets valuable? And it's really, really challenging from the outside. I think a lot of people view these kind of careers and they see that there's this like strong barrier that happens. And there is, but the strong barrier is, there's two strong barriers. It's um and they often have to do with your own psychology. The first one is learning the lingo and learning the language of these particular careers that are interesting well before anybody's actually paying attention to them, right? Like when people are really talking about them right now, artificial intelligence is just extraordinarily hot. Um, and everybody and their dog is talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning and reinforcement learning and all these kind of things. And frankly, a lot of people don't really know, and they were not interested in them until just a few years ago. Um, and yet, if you were to look at the fields, it is a field of a bunch of misfits for the most part, and people being disregarded for extraordinarily long term. This was a career that a lot of people just didn't pay attention to for a very, very long time. They thought it was a non-serious uh, area of science. It really was. And, um, this is the thing that you have to sort of, so this gets into two psychological things I want to talk about. The first one is learning the language of a field that is advanced, right? Like it's moving, but nobody really cares about it, right? Like virology, for example, right? Or epidemiology, or um, genomics, or DNA sequencing. What else is there? There's all these kind of weird things that you might have heard about, and they're often taught in like seventh grade. But if you pick one, right? So maybe it's earthquake science, for example, and you want to learn about geoengineering, for example, geological engineering, and you pick it and you go into it knowing that nobody cares about it and it's kind of an irrelevant thing. And what you do is you have to learn the language. You have to go down in fairly strong depth in a particular area that you become a competent expert on this particular area, right? And you have to go into a fair amount of depth. Now, the other thing, and maybe sometimes you have to get certifications so the outside world understands what you know, right? Like that's often the sort of signaling aspect of degrees and things like that actually matter. Um, you know, on the other side, it's developing this ability to do things that very few people are willing to do and care to actually do. And it's a willingness to just kind of not fit in with culture, right? It often is very difficult. And if you look at people that are in these domains, um, now many of them are extraordinarily wealthy, for example, that were in computer stuff. And they're all in the rage and all that kind of stuff, right? But when I was going through with university, um, it was extraordinarily nerdy, like the nerdiest of the nerdy people that you'd ever met that was going into these kind of areas. And you have to get used to being like that and realizing that um most people, most conceptions of the world, like the 99% of the world that you run into, it's just frankly, they're wrong. They make bad predictions of the future. They're wrong in the sense of what the future is going to be, but they're right in the sense what it is right now, right? And so they're really good at exploiting the current environment, but not really good with sort of predicting where to go. Now it's really difficult to know where to go, but there's often a lot of clues on what that might be, right? So you look at, you know, grants or that there is some conversation but not a lot about a particular area like quantum computing. I think right now that is a potential to have something that's interesting that's going on, but not too many people are interested in it. Nanotechnology, right? Like there is these plausible areas to go into, and what you realize once you go into these areas and you take some reasonable depth, first of all, they borrow a tremendous amount from other areas, so it's not necessarily all that scary, right? So I study, um, people often don't understand what I do or what I study, but I, often study. The way I think about it is I study learning from failure within these kind of domains of innovation that are um, prone to have a lot of failure, right? And what's fascinating is the what happens in these domains is that we borrow a lot from other domains. So you become knowledgeable in all these other domains. So the idea and what extraordinarily clever people do often is they just simply change the language of what they're doing, but it's the same tools, the same methodology. Uh, and so they just kind of change what they're actually what the communication style that they're focused on, not necessarily what they are doing, right? Like not the fundamentals of what they're doing. The fundamentals are often just like things like basic sciences and math and things like that. Um, but they just change the language. They change the terminology. And so if you can come up with figuring out how to go into weird areas, right? Like just feeling weird and feeling uncomfortable, or finding a group of people that are nerdy enough to study an area and go into it. And then as well develop the language and come up with the language, then you're going to do extraordinarily well in the long term. But it's such a long-term play, most people don't realize it's actually happening. It's several decades of a long-term play. So, with that, by the way, if you want to learn a little bit more about science, check out the reciprocity platform. In terms of what I'm trying to do, it's actually fun. I use it every day. I personally use it every day. Um, if for a long time it wasn't that case where I wouldn't, I didn't necessarily use it every day because it wasn't set up that way. But now I have a lot of instant feedback that makes it very, very addictive. And I'm on a streak of like I don't know if it's like 30 days or something like that. And I'm hoping to get a streak of a year. Um, and the only reason that happened was early on, I kept like missing a day or two on the weekends, but now I've got it. I've got it nailed down. I've got it dialed in. So, um, and it's super fascinating. It's super great. It's easy. So just check that out. And the idea is just like, how do we get anybody anywhere to learn these things and have it fun and interesting? Um, anyways, so that's enough about that. Take care and have a wonderful day.